The phone rang at 4:47 in the morning. Not many people knew that number. Not many people dared to call it at that hour. But when the private line inside Kensington Palace buzzed in the darkness, the man who answered it already knew somehow that nothing would be the same after that call. Prince William sat up slowly. The room was still dark. Catherine stirred beside him but didn't wake. He pressed the phone to his ear and listened. He didn't speak. He didn't react. He just listened, his jaw tightening with every word that came through the line. When the call ended, he sat at the edge of the bed for a long moment. The curtains were thick, but a thin line of gray light was beginning to push through the gap. London was waking up. The world outside had no idea what was about to happen. But William knew, and he had exactly 3 words to say. Before we go further, if stories like this move you, if they keep you up past midnight thinking about loyalty, duty, and the quiet weight of a crown, hit subscribe. There are more stories waiting for you. Real ones. Ones that change how you see the world. The news broke at 6:15 a.m. on a Tuesday in late autumn. It came first as a whisper on social media, a vague post, a blurry screenshot, a name that nobody wanted to believe they were reading. Then, within minutes, it exploded. Prince Andrew had been arrested. The details were sparse at first. A car, a location in Windsor. Officers who had reportedly been watching and waiting for weeks. There was no dramatic scene, no chase, no shouting. Just a quiet knock on a door, a brief exchange. And then the image that would circle the globe before most of Britain had finished their morning tea. The Duke of York, younger brother of the late King Charles, stepping into a dark police vehicle with his coat pulled tight and his eyes fixed on the ground. The palace had no statement ready. Nobody had expected this, or at least that was what they wanted the public to believe. Inside the walls of Kensington, the atmosphere was something different. Staff moved quickly through the corridors, hushed conversations. Closed doors, the soft, urgent tap of footsteps on marble floors. An assistant knocked on a private office door and was told to wait. A senior advisor was already on the phone, voice low, listening more than speaking. Prince William stood at the window of his office, overlooking the gardens. He hadn't changed out of his gray morning clothes. He held a cup of tea that had gone cold. His face was calm in the way that only someone who has spent a lifetime being watched learns to make it. Not because he felt calm, but because calm was what the moment required behind him. His most trusted aide, a man named James Ellery, stood quietly near the door. Ellery had served William for over 9 years. He had sat with him through grief and celebration. He knew when to speak and, more importantly, when not to. That morning, he did not speak. He waited, and then William turned from the window. He looked at Ellery directly, the kind of look that carried everything a man couldn't say out loud in a palace full of listening walls. He spoke 3 words. Ellery nodded once and left the room at almost a run. Those 3 words would take 3 days to fully understand. They would move through corridors and across phone lines and into the ears of people who had spent their careers preparing for a moment exactly like this one and still weren't ready. Outside, London was loud and restless. The headlines were multiplying by the minute. Cameras were gathering outside Buckingham Palace. Journalists were already calling it a constitutional crisis. But inside Kensington, in a room that smelled faintly of old books and cold tea, something quiet had already begun. Something that would change the royal family forever. Asterisk. James Ellery moved through the palace like a man carrying something fragile and heavy at the same time. He passed 2 junior staff members without acknowledging them, which was unusual. Ellery was known for his courteous nods, his small, kind gestures. But that morning, his mind was already 3 steps ahead of his body. He reached a side corridor near the eastern wing. pulled out his phone and made a call that lasted exactly 4 minutes. Then he made another. Then he sent a single encrypted message to a contact listed in his phone only by initials. He did all of this because William had asked him to. Because those 3 words, quiet, direct, unmistakable, had set something in motion. The words were, protect the guard. To understand why those words mattered, you have to understand what had been happening. In the weeks before Andrew's arrest, there was a royal protection officer named Daniel Howe. He had been assigned to Prince Andrew's detail for almost 4 years. A former military man, decorated, disciplined, private. The kind of person who blended into the background of photographs. While everyone else looked at the royals in the foreground, Daniel Howe had done his job without complaint. He had stood outside doors at all hours. He had driven in silence and waited in rain and said nothing to anyone about what he had witnessed in those years. He was loyal in the way that only soldiers and servants of long tradition can be, not blindly, but deeply. Loyalty as a form of integrity. But in the weeks before the arrest, something had changed for Daniel. He had seen things. Small things, perhaps. A meeting that wasn't on any official schedule. A face he recognized from documents he wasn't supposed to have seen. A conversation he overheard that lasted only 90 seconds, but left him standing in a corridor afterwards. Feeling like the floor had shifted beneath him. He hadn't gone to the press. He hadn't gone to his superiors. He had done something that many would later call either brave or reckless, depending on how they saw it. He had sent a letter, handwritten, private, to someone inside Kensington Palace. That letter had reached William 3 weeks before the arrest. Catherine found William still in his office just after 8 that morning. She entered quietly, closed the door behind her, and didn't ask him anything straight away. She sat in the chair across from his desk and looked at him the way she had learned to over years of marriage, reading the tension in his shoulders, the stillness in his hands. "Is it as bad as they're saying?" she asked finally. William looked up. "It's worse," he said simply. She nodded. She didn't push. "There's a man," William said. "He did the right thing. And now he's going to be punished for it unless someone steps in." Catherine was quiet for a moment. "Daniel Howe," she said. William's expression shifted just slightly. Just enough to show that he was surprised she knew the name. "James told me. Last week." She held his gaze. "What are you going to do?" William stood. He walked back to the window. Outside, a pair of ravens crossed the gray sky slowly, their wings wide and unhurried. "What I should have done 3 weeks ago," he said. The news cycle by mid-morning had become deafening. Every channel, every platform, every conversation. Andrew's name was everywhere. The old scandals were being resurfaced, the interviews, the associations, the denials. Commentators spoke with great authority about things they barely understood. Politicians chose their words carefully, which meant they said almost nothing at all. Nobody was talking about Daniel. How? That was exactly the problem, because within the machinery of palace security and legal process, Daniel's name had surfaced. His letter had been traced, and there were people, careful, powerful, patient people who did not want a royal protection officer speaking to anyone about what he had seen by mid-afternoon. Daniel Howe had been quietly suspended from duty, pending an internal review. By the time evening fell on London, he had received the first warning, not from the police, not from any official body, from a number he didn't recognize. A message that said only, "Stay quiet. Walk away. This is your only reminder." Daniel sat in his flat in South London, phone in hand. Heart steady the way a soldier's heart is trained to be, even when everything around it is not. He didn't reply to the message. He waited because he had sent his own letter. and he believed he had to believe that someone had read it. Asterisk, asterisk. The letter had arrived on a Wednesday. A plain envelope, no return address, the kind you could buy in any post office in Britain. But the handwriting was careful and deliberate, each word pressed firmly into the page, as if the writer understood that pressure and permanence mattered. It was addressed to no one by name. Just a single title written in full: The Prince of Wales. Inside the palace, letters like that were screened. Hundreds arrived every week, from well-wishers, from the troubled, from the obsessed, from the lonely. Most were read by staff and filed or discarded. A small number were flagged and passed upward. This one had been flagged. Not because it contained a threat, not because it was strange or alarming in tone. It was flagged because of what it described: specific, precise, impossible to dismiss as imagination. Daniel Howe had written 3 pages. He described a meeting he had witnessed at a private location in Berkshire 6 weeks prior. He named no names directly. He was careful about that. But he described the sequence of events, the timing, the faces, the nature of what was discussed. He wrote with the quiet authority of someone who had spent years being invisible. In powerful rooms, he ended the letter with a single sentence that the staff member who read it later said stayed with her for days. "I am not asking to be believed. I am asking only to be heard before the right moment to say anything passes forever." William had read the letter 3 times when it first reached him. He had read it once standing up, moving through the words quickly, absorbing the outline. He had read it a second time sitting down, slowly, going back over the details. And then, late that same night, he had read it a 3rd time alone. With no one else in the room, he hadn't spoken about it to Ellery until the following morning. He hadn't spoken to Catherine until days later. He had sat with it in the way that serious decisions require, not rushing, not dismissing, letting the weight of it settle into him completely, because what Daniel Howe had described in that letter touched something much larger than Andrew's arrest. The arrest, William now understood, was only the surface of the water. What was beneath it was deeper, colder, and older. There were connections between Andrew's private activities and certain interests that the royal family, as an institution, could not afford to be publicly linked to. Not legal matters, necessarily, but matters of influence, of access, of favors exchanged in rooms where no cameras came. Daniel had seen one piece of that, just one piece. But he had described it with enough precision that anyone with context could see the larger shape it belonged to. And someone had figured out that. Daniel had written the letter, possibly through the envelope, possibly through a quiet internal leak. It didn't matter how. What mattered was that Daniel was now exposed. And the people who wanted this buried were not patient people. Ellery made contact with Daniel on Thursday evening, not by phone, not by message. In person at a pub in Bermondsey that Daniel used to frequent when he was stationed nearby years ago, a detail Ellery had found through carefully discreet research. He arrived before Daniel, sat near the back, ordered nothing, and waited. Daniel walked in at 7:15. He paused at the door, scanned the room the way protection officers always do, not anxiously, but habitually. His eyes found Ellery. He recognized the face from royal engagements. The way people in that world recognized each other without ever being formally introduced. He walked over and sat down without being invited. "You got the letter," Daniel said. Not a question. He read it himself, Ellery replied. All of it. Daniel looked at the table for a moment. Then he nodded. Something in his posture changed, not relief exactly, but the particular release of a man who has been holding his breath for 3 weeks. "They've suspended me," he said. "We know. And the message last night. We know about that too." Daniel looked up. "Then you know this isn't going to stay quiet. Whatever they're trying to protect, it's already unraveling. Andrew's arrest is just the beginning. Ellery looked at him steadily. Prince William asked me to give you something. He reached into his jacket and placed a folded piece of paper on the table. It wasn't sealed. Daniel opened it. It was short. A single paragraph, handwritten. Daniel read it once. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his breast pocket, against his chest. He didn't show it to anyone. Not that night, not for days afterward, but the expression on his face as he walked out of that pub into the cold London air was the expression of a man who had just remembered why he had chosen this life in the first place, not for the title, not for the prestige, for the belief, however fragile, however tested, that some things were still worth protecting. By Friday morning, the story had shifted shape again. New details about Paulette. Andrew's arrest had leaked to 2 tabloids simultaneously, the kind of coordinated leak that never happens by accident. The details were lurid, carefully chosen to generate outrage, and almost entirely focused on Andrew himself. His history, his denials, his defiance. The public was hungry, and the press was feeding them exactly what they said. Wanted, which meant nobody was looking anywhere else. That was the point. Well, the cameras crowded outside the courthouse and commentators debated what the arrest meant for the monarchy's future. Something quieter was happening. A series of phone calls between legal teams. A meeting in a private members club near St. James's. A document not official. Not filed, not yet. That was being prepared with one purpose: to destroy Daniel Howe's credibility before he could say anything publicly. The document would claim that Daniel had been investigated 2 years prior for misuse of confidential information. It would suggest he had a history of instability. It would paint him as a disgruntled employee with a grudge and a motive to fabricate. None of it was true. But truth, in those circles, was only one tool among many. And sometimes it wasn't the most effective. The document was being prepared by a solicitor who had acted for powerful clients for 30 years, a man who had made problems disappear with the quiet efficiency of a surgeon. He had done it before. He expected to do it again. He didn't know yet that Ellery had a source inside that firm. William was briefed on the document's existence on Friday afternoon. He was in a routine engagement, a visit to a children's hospital in North London, when Ellery sent him a coded message on a private channel. William read it between 2 scheduled interactions, his face betraying nothing, nodding at a nurse who was explaining a new ward initiative with genuine enthusiasm. He finished the visit. He smiled for photographs. He crouched down and spoke gently to a small girl in a hospital bed who showed him a drawing she had made. He did all of this as if the message in his pocket didn't exist. That was the discipline of a lifetime. That was what the crown, even at a distance, even reformed, even modernized, still required of the people who carried it. Back in the car, the partition up, Ellery beside him, William let out a long, slow breath. How long before they file it? He asked. 48 hours. Maybe less if they feel rushed. William looked out the window. Wet streets, gray sky. A city going about its ordinary, unknowing life. And Daniel. He's been careful. He hasn't spoken to press. He hasn't gone anywhere unusual. Ellery paused. But he can't stay invisible forever. They'll move against him regardless of whether he says anything publicly. They want him discredited before anyone thinks to ask him questions. William was quiet for a moment. The note I sent him. He kept it. He kept it. Does he understand what it means? Practically, I mean. Not just the sentiment. Ellery glanced at him. I think so. But he may need it confirmed. Then confirm it. That evening, Daniel received a second contact. This time, it was a phone call, a number he had been told to expect. A voice he didn't recognize, but whose tone was precise and professional. The conversation lasted 11 minutes. It covered practical matters, legal representation, the existence of a protective file that had been quietly assembled, a set of witnesses who could confirm the legitimacy of what Daniel had seen in Berkshire. It covered what would happen if the fabricated document was filed, and what response would follow. Daniel asked only one question during the entire call. Why is he doing this? Publicly, it costs him. There's no clean outcome here. There was a brief pause on the other end. Because he believes it's right, the voice said, and because he made a promise to someone once that the people who did the right thing in this family's name would not be left standing alone. Daniel didn't respond to that immediately. He walked to his window and looked out at the street below. Ordinary Friday night life. People moving between pubs and restaurants. Laughter drifting up from somewhere. "Tell him I understand," Daniel said finally. "He knows," the voice replied. The call ended. Outside on the street, a group of young men walked past, laughing loudly. A couple argued quietly under a bus shelter. A dog pulled its owner toward a lamppost. The world was completely normal and completely unaware. Daniel stood at his window for a long time after that. He thought about the letter he had written, about the moment he had sealed the envelope and walked to the post office on a gray morning, half convinced he was being foolish, half convinced it was the only honest thing left to do. He thought about the 3 words William had said, that Ellery had eventually shared with him in full context. Protect the guard, not protect the palace. Not protect the institution. Not protect the narrative, protect the guard. Him, specifically. It was such a small thing to say, and such a large thing to mean. He turned away from the window and sat down. There was work to do. Not the easy kind, the kind that kept you awake and required you to be better than you felt capable of being. He had been that kind of tired before. He had survived it before. He opened his laptop, and he began. The fabricated document was filed on Saturday morning. It went to the internal royal household oversight body, a quiet, rarely discussed committee that handled sensitive personnel matters. It was filed not with noise or drama, but with the casual efficiency of people who had done this before and expected it to work cleanly by noon. Daniel had officially received notice of an expanded investigation. His access to all palace-adjacent premises was revoked. His security clearance, accumulated over more than a decade, was placed under formal review. And his photograph appeared on the internal memo without his knowledge or consent. He read the notice on his phone. He was in a coffee shop in Stockwell when it arrived. He read it once, put his phone face down on the table, and finished his coffee. He paid at the counter, thanked the barista who had kind eyes and called everyone love, and walked out into the weekend morning. He did not panic. He had been told to expect this. He had been told exactly what it would feel like and how quickly it would move. Knowing it was coming didn't make it painless, but it made it survivable. His phone buzzed as he reached the pavement. A message from the legal contact he had been given. 3 words, asterisk, we saw it. He typed back to, I'm ready. Asterisk, inside Kensington, the filing of the document had been anticipated, but its speed surprised even Ellery. He was in William's private office when the confirmation came through, and he watched William's expression process it in real time. They didn't wait, Ellery said. No. William stood. Which means they're more afraid than we thought. He turned to look at Ellery directly. How quickly can we move? The legal team is already prepared. The witness statements are signed and ready to be released. We have the timeline documentation from the Berkshire meeting, enough to confirm Daniel's account independently. Ellery paused. But William, the moment we move officially, this becomes public. The press will have it within hours. I know. It implicates palace-adjacent interests. People will draw connections to Andrew's arrest. To the institution itself, I know that too. Ellery looked at him steadily. Are you certain? William's answer was quiet, but there was no hesitation in it. None at all. A man did the right thing. He wrote a letter when he could have stayed silent. He kept quiet when they threatened him. He trusted that someone would stand up. He paused. If we don't move now, if we wait for a cleaner moment, a safer moment, then we become the thing people always suspected we were. People who protect themselves first. I won't do that. Ellery nodded once. He had served William long enough to recognize when a decision was truly final, not announced loudly, but settled deeply. Like stone dropped into still water, quiet and permanent. I'll make the calls, Ellery said. The response filed on Daniel's behalf reached the oversight committee at 3:47 p.m. on Saturday. It was thorough. It was calm. And it was devastating in the way that the truth, properly documented and clearly presented, can be devastating, not through anger or accusation, but through the sheer weight of what it demonstrated. The fabricated investigation history was addressed point by point. The timeline showed it could not have occurred as claimed. The witnesses, two of them serving officers. One, a former Palace legal advisor, confirmed that the Berkshire meeting had taken place precisely as Daniel described. The nature of what had been discussed, the people present, the decisions that had been made. All of it laid out with the careful precision of people who had been building this file quietly for weeks. At the bottom of the response was a note from the legal team that the matter would be referred to independent oversight if the internal process was not immediately suspended. The committee chair, a cautious man who had navigated palace politics for 20 years by knowing exactly when to step back, read the document in his home office that afternoon. He read it twice. Then he picked up the phone and made a call to the solicitor who had filed the fabricated document. The conversation, by all accounts, was brief and not pleasant by 6 o'clock. The expanded investigation into Daniel Howe had been suspended pending review. Daniel found out through his legal contact. He was cooking dinner, something simple, pasta and garlic. The kind of meal that felt ordinary and grounding. When the message came through, he stood at the stove for a moment with his phone in one hand and a wooden spoon in the other. He read the message again to be sure he had understood it correctly. He put the phone down. He turned back to the stove. He stirred the pasta. He was not the kind of man who celebrated quietly or loudly. He was the kind of man who had learned that relief and gratitude were things you felt deeply and kept private. But as he moved around his small kitchen that evening, there was something different in the air, something lighter, just slightly, than it had been for weeks. He thought of the letter he had written, the envelope he had sealed, the post office on that gray morning. He thought of 3 words spoken in a palace corridor that had eventually, somehow, reached all the way down to a kitchen in South London. And he thought, not for the first time, not for the last, that sometimes doing the right thing, in the dark, with no guarantee of outcome, was exactly enough. But the story wasn't over yet, not even close, because on Sunday morning, someone talked to the press. The story broke on Sunday at 10:22. In the morning, it appeared first on a political news site known for reliable sourcing and careful language. Then, within 20 minutes, it had been picked up by 3 national papers. By noon, it was everywhere. The headline wasn't about Andrew. It wasn't about the arrest or the legal proceedings or the constitutional questions being debated on television. It was about Daniel Howe, Royal Protection Officer, vindicated after alleged palace suppression attempt. The story was accurate. The details were precise, drawn clearly from someone who had access to the documentation that had been filed. Someone who had decided that the public deserved to know not just what Andrew had done, but what had been done to the man who had tried to report it inside Kensington. Ellery read the headline on his phone and then walked to William's study and knocked. William was already awake, already reading. He looked up when Ellery entered and there was something in his expression that was difficult to name. Not surprise, not satisfaction exactly. Something more like the quiet recognition of a thing that had been set in motion finally completing its course. "It's out," Ellery said. "Yes. Did you know it would happen today?" William was quiet for a moment. "I knew it would happen," he said. "The timing? No. But it doesn't matter." What happened in the following hours was the kind of thing that palace watchers and constitutional historians would later write about at length and still not fully capture. The story moved through the public conversation like a current, changing the direction of everything it touched. The fabricated document was now exposed. The solicitor who had prepared it issued a brief, carefully worded denial that convinced almost no one. The Oversight Committee released a neutral statement confirming that the investigation into Daniel had been suspended, and the individuals connected to the Berkshire meeting whose names had not yet been published, but whose outlines were becoming visible, began a process of very quiet retreat. Andrew's legal team, dealing already with a crisis of their own, said nothing. The question everyone was asking in newsrooms, in political offices, in ordinary households over Sunday lunch was the same asterisk: where did this come from? Who made it happen? Asterisk. The palace released no statement. William gave no interview. His office confirmed only that he was aware of the matter and supports all appropriate processes of transparency. That was the official line. Bland, careful, impossible to argue with. But the people who knew, who had been part of it, who had made the calls and prepared the documents and sat in back rooms of quiet pubs, they knew something different. They knew that 3 words spoken in a gray-lit palace office at 5 in the morning had started all of this. They knew that a prince had read a handwritten letter 3 times and then acted on it. Not because it was politically safe, not because it benefited the institution, but because it was the right thing to do. Daniel gave a brief statement to his legal team that was shared publicly on Sunday afternoon. It was short for sentences. He thanked the people who had supported him. He confirmed that he stood by everything he had reported. He said that he hoped the matter would be handled through proper channels. He said nothing about William. He said nothing about Kensington. But that evening, a single post appeared on a small social media account that had not been active in months. An account connected to a name no one in the public knew. It contained no words. Just a photograph. It was a photograph of a plain envelope, slightly crumpled, with an address written in careful handwriting. Underneath, one line. Asterisk, some letters get read. Some people keep their word. That's all. Asterisk, it was shared quietly at first, then widely. Then the kind of widely that becomes a moment, the kind that gets screenshot and saved and sent between people who feel something when they see it that they can't quite explain, because in a week that had been full of exposure and betrayal and the ugly architecture of powerful people protecting themselves, this small image meant something different. It meant that somewhere in the complicated, compromised, often disappointing machinery of institutions and power, something human had happened. A man done the right thing in the dark, and someone else, someone with everything to lose and nothing obvious to gain, had seen it and acted. 3 words. Quiet, private, never officially confirmed. Protect the guard. No press conference. No announcement. No visible reward. Just a promise, made and kept. In the way that the best promises always are. Not loudly, not publicly, but in the full knowledge of what it costs to mean what you say weeks later, when the dust had settled enough for people to breathe again. James Ellery was walking through the east corridor of Kensington late one evening. It was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home. The building had that particular nighttime feeling of an old place resting. He passed William's office. The door was slightly open. A lamp was on inside. He paused. William was at his desk, not reading, not on his phone, just sitting. The kind of sitting that looks like rest, but is actually something more like thought, the deep, necessary, invisible work of carrying something that doesn't have a name. Ellery didn't knock. He simply said, from the doorway, quietly, "Daniel sent something." "A card." William looked up. He said Ellery glanced at the card in his hand briefly. He said, "Asterisky, kept your note. I'll keep it the rest of my life. Thank you for remembering what service is supposed to mean." Asterisk, the room was quiet for a moment. William nodded. Just once. He turned back to his desk and outside. London moved on, noisy and restless and entirely unaware of the small, enormous things that had happened inside its oldest walls. Some stories never make the front page. Some of the most important ones never do. But they happen. They matter. And the people who were part of them carry them forward in kept letters and quiet nods and the steady, private knowledge that loyalty, real loyalty, never asks to be seen. It just shows up and stays.